Assalamu alaikum everybody, my name is Wasil Khan and today we'll be talking about the introduction to endocrinology. So this is the basic course plan that we'll be following for this module. The introduction. Endocrinology is basically the understanding of the hormone secretion, the hormone action and the principles that are involved in its feedback control. The endocrine system is evaluated primarily by measuring the hormone concentration. So this is an important point. Most of the disorders of the endocrine system are either due to the underproduction or the overproduction of a hormone that leads to detrimental effect on one's health. So this term was basically coined by Starling. The hormones that are secreted internally, those are called as endocrine, and the hormones that are released externally, which means exocrine, that are released directly into the lumen, such as the gastrointestinal tract. So this term hormone basically it's a Greek phrase which means basically to set in motion, which actually describes the dynamic actions of the hormones as they elicit the certain responses and then regulate the physiologic processes throughout its feedback mechanism. The basic endocrine organs are these the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the thyroid, the parathyroid, adrenal glands, the pancreatic islet cells, and the gonads also. And there are certain hormones which comes into the category of others. So all these we'll be talking about all these endocrine organs in our subsequent videos. The other hormones basically are released from the kidney, such as erythropoietin and renin, which are responsible in the blood pressure control. There is hormones released in the heart. There are hormones released in the lungs, GIT, and certain hormones are released from placenta to maintain the pregnancy. Moving on to the classification of the hormones, we'll be talking about firstly about the amino acid derivatives, which are basically dopamine, catecholamine, and thyroid hormone. They are derived from a specific amino acid that leads to their production. Moving on to we have small neuropeptides, which are GnRH, thyrotropin releasing hormones, somatostatin and vasopressin. They've got large proteins such as insulin, luteinizing hormone, and PTH produced by the classic endocrine glands. We have got steroid hormones such as cortisol and estrogen, and vitamin derivatives such as retinoid and vitamin D. So their classification is really essential in order to understand their basic mode of action. As a general rule, the hormones that are protein based, they basically act on the cell surface receptors. Since they cannot cross the phospholipid bilayer, so they act on the cell surface receptors on the cell surface membrane. Whereas the steroid based hormones, because they can cross, because they are fatty in nature and they can cross the phospholipid bilayer, so they act on the intracellular, which means inside the cell, nuclear proteins. There are three basic mechanisms of hormone release. You can pause the video and look at this picture to get a better clarity of what I'm talking about. First of all, we have got humoral response, humoral mechanism in which, due to the response in changing to the different levels of ions and nutrients in the blood, different hormones are released. For example, in the regulation of calcium, the parathyroid hormone basically releases certain hormones. For example, parathyroid hormone, which are released from the parathyroid gland, or the calcitonin might be released in order to either lower or increase the concentration of calcium in the blood. Then you got neural, which is in which a hormone is released because of the stimulation by the nerves. And lastly, we have got hormonal mechanism by which there is a stimulation when it is received from the other hormones. So as we can see in this picture, the hypothalamus and eventually the pituitary gland releases certain hormones, which eventually activates the other glands to release certain other hormones. The site of hormone action is really important. The endocrine gland, as we all know, that they release their hormone directly into the blood, which goes and moves along into the blood and gets into its target organ on the target cell receptor to produce its effect. The exocrine glands does not involve the blood transmission or the blood movement. It directly releases its hormone onto the target cell receptors and produces its effect. The autocrine glands are really easy to understand. As a cell which produces the hormone, the same cell has its receptor for its exhibiting its function, and the neurotransmission is basically involved in the production of an action potential. In basically, they are usually released due to there is a synapse, and in that synapse, when there is a need of nerve impulse propagation, the neurotransmission is very essential. Moving on to the functions, there are four basic functions of endocrine system, which is the maintenance of growth and development. These are the specific hormones that are related to that. Then we have got the maintenance of the internal environment, which basically means homeostasis. Then there is regulation of energy balance and metabolism. There is lastly the reproduction and species propagation. So there is an important concept in endocrinology which is known as endocrinal axis, which basically involves different structures in the body that are responsible to basically exhibit a specific function. For example, there is a neural control, then there is, this is just an example, then got pituitary gland which basically releases certain trophic hormone which acts on endocrine glands, then it releases the hormones which may be either lead to metabolism or may be bind to certain proteins to exhibit certain other effects, or may directly go onto a receptor in the target organ and produces this effect. So all you can see over here, this green arrows basically shows the feedback regulation. Either they might have a positive feedback, or they may be a negative feedback as per to the body needs. This is an endocrinal axis of different hormones which are responsible to exhibit different functions. You can pause the video and see the order of the hormone release from top to bottom to get a better clarity of what I'm talking about. Moving on to the regulation, like I mentioned, the regulation is basically controlled by the feedback mechanisms. It might be negative and the positive, these are the fundamental features of endocrine systems. It is due to the physiological needs of the body that maybe a positive feedback might be initiated or a negative feedback might be initiated. This picture also gives you a better clarity of what I just explained. So this basic positive and negative signs basically shows the positive feedback and the negative feedback identities. Coming on to the basic overview of the endocrine disorders, like I mentioned, they might be an hormonal axis, which might lead to certain diseases. There may be hormone deficiency, which there might be a hormone hypersensitivity. There may be hormone resistance, and the bullet points basically shows the respective risk factors that can lead to such conditions. You can pause the video and see which type of endocrine disorder can lead to certain certain diseases that are given in these two pictures and these two. So the presentation is really important. There are certain set of symptoms that are very specific, not very they are very non-specific in the presentation of endocrine diseases. So the investigations are necessary in order to confirm what is the causative agent, or which is the causing hormone which is responsible for that endocrine disease. So a timely diagnosis is really essential. Then we have to do certain biochemical tests in order to confirm that. Then sometimes imaging, which involves the CT scans and sometimes X-ray and MRI, which basically gives the proper clarity of what disease there is, and biopsy might also. So this was the basic introduction of the endocrinology module. We would be covering individual individual videos about each and every hormone in the upcoming subsequent videos. So stay tuned and thank you so much.